Today on Geek Devotions, we're talking about Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway and why we shouldn't allow the trauma from our past to dictate how we see the future. Hello, Devoted Geeks. Welcome to Geek Devotions, a show from Devoted Geeks, are devoted to letting you know that you're loved. I'm Dallas. I'm so glad you've hit the play button today. If you're new to our show, we take geek pop culture items like movies, video games, and comic books, and we use them to let people like you know that you're loved. So if you don't watch past this moment right here, right now, know this. We love you and care about you. There is a plan and a purpose for your life. Don't give up. That being said, I want to invite you that if you like today's content, make sure you hit the like button. Consider subscribing to our channel so you can get content like this every single week on Fridays. As I said in my intro, we're talking about Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, which is the newest Gundam movie that just dropped here stateside on Netflix, and I am excited. It came out yesterday, and I stayed up all night watching it and taking notes and thinking about this film because it was a lot of fun for me. Now, the thing I want you guys to understand about this movie is I'm not really sure where they're coming into it. Either they're using the movie Char's Counterattack as the basis, or they're using the books that took place before, and which also involves Char's Counterattack. And there's a crucial scene that takes place that really hits home, but it goes one of two ways. In Char's Counterattack, it happens differently than the books. You see, the main character named Hathaway, he's dealing with a lot of trauma, and that trauma revolves around the death of a young lady named Quest, who he had fallen in love with. The difference is that in the movie, somebody else killed her in the midst of a really terrible battle. In the book, he's the one that fired the fatal shots. I personally lean towards the idea that they're suggesting that he's the one that did it for these movies, simply because this is a movie based off the books, the 3-part book series called Hathaways Past, but also because there's a lot of conversation about him taking out another mobile suit, and I really think it was Quest. I really think that's what's happening. With that being said, that's kind of the basis of where I'm kind of want to go with this. See, in this movie, Hathaway has made some interesting decisions. Like I said previously, whether in the books or the movies, he was wrapped up in the war. His dad was one of the lead commanders for the Earth Federation fighting against the Space Noids, Neo-Zeon. There's a lot to this, I know. I'll try to have a link to a really great video that explains the Gundam world for you guys. But he grew up in the world of the Earth Federation. He understands the Earth Federation. He understands their way they think and they do. And he sees his dad as a great man. But in the midst of Char's counterattack, the waters got muddy. He fell in love with a woman who sided with Neo-Zeon. And you can make arguments both ways, but in my opinion, that's an evil way to go. And when she died, it really affected him. This movie picks up 12 years later, and he's kind of moved on, he's got a job, but there's something deeper going on. And what you discover is that he, and this is a minor spoiler, it takes place like the first 20 minutes of the movie, he's the leader of a terrorist organization. And yeah, he's a terrorist. Now, if you're new to Gundam, I need you to understand this. Every Gundam series kind of muddies the water. They take a broad look at the concept of war and what takes place in war and shows you both sides. So when you have the quote-unquote good side, sometimes they look like they're the bad guys. When you have the quote-unquote bad guys, they sometimes look like the good guys. And this is no different. This movie is no different. It really does kind of muddy the waters. See, what happened is Hathaway, when he came back after the war, he saw the Earth Federation doing some really terrible things, and it bothered him and angered him. The problem is that in his grief, because he allowed his unresolved grief to really boil up inside of him, he did something interesting. See, not only has he become a terrorist fighting the Earth Federation for what seems like good reasons, but really he's become, if you look at his standards, what he's wanting to do, he's become the very enemy that they fought years before, Char. In fact, at one point in time, somebody says that him as a individual, his character, is almost the ghost of Char Aznavour himself. Again, if you look at the story in a broad way, it boils down to this. He had unresolved depression and grief from something terrible that took place years beforehand. And that was festered and that grew into a terrible thing, into anger, into hatred for certain things. Now he's doing very, very terrible things to other people, seemingly for good purposes. In life, there are people who go through that same situation. They experience terrible things, and they have every right to be angry. They have every right to be angry and mad at the world. But the actions that come out of them Just because wrong has been done to you doesn't mean that you have the right to do wrong back. That's a terrible idea, and that's a terrible thing. But there's some people who believe that that's just what happens. We should excuse people for these things. We should make excuses for ourselves. We're doing terrible things because terrible things have happened to me. And trust me, I've been there. I've had terrible things happen in my life, and I've made excuses like that for myself in the past. But it doesn't make my actions right. Even if I'm approaching something, trying to do something good, if I go about it the wrong way, it's still wrong. But like I said, some people believe that it's unavoidable, that it's something that takes place, but it doesn't have to. You don't have to walk down this road. You don't have to allow your terrible experiences, and then trust me, some of you guys have been through some terrible things. I know. But you don't have to allow those to grow into a root of bitterness that leads you down a destructive path. There's an individual in the scriptures who went through some terrible things. He was greatly loved by his father, and his brothers were jealous, so they literally took him and threw him in a pit and told his dad, hey, we killed him, or he died rather. And then they sold him into slavery. And then while in slavery, he was accused of doing things, and he was abused and all kinds of stuff, and he was imprisoned for years. He has every right to be angry. He was forgotten in prison for many years, betrayed by individuals. Yet, something interesting happens to him. I'm of course talking about Joesph, who you find in the book of Genesis. And something interesting takes place at the end of his life. See, Joesph gets set up for something special. He ends up being kind of the overseer of the nation. And he's in charge of basically saving everybody in the midst of a great famine. And one day while he's doing things, some individuals show up and he recognizes them. They're his brothers, the very people who sold him to slavery, the very people that put his path down a really dark road for a good little bit. And he had a choice. Do I return evil with evil, or do I show grace? And you need to read it. It's really interesting how he handles the situation, but the bottom line is this: he shows them grace. He shows them love. He shows them hope. You don't have to be a victim of your past. You don't have to allow your past to become a root of bitterness and cause you to be an angry and spiteful person. You don't have to choose that way. Again, Hathaway, he chose a path of terrorism. In his mind, he thinks he's doing right. He thinks he's doing the right thing, but he's going about it the wrong way. You don't have to do that. You can walk a better path. So question of the day for you guys is this: what is your favorite Gundam series? What is your favorite Gundam franchise? Leave a comment down below, let me know, and let me know why. I also invite you guys to check out our podcast, Comm Talk by Geek Devotions, where this Sunday we'll have a new episode of B's, Views, and Reviews, which is done by our friend Branson, who is going to be doing a review on a comic book. It's going to be really interesting. And you can check it out. Again, just look for Comm Talk by Geek Devotions on all your favorite podcast catchers. Also invite you to check out our website, geekdevotions.com, where you can find links to all of our social medias and devotions and articles that we put out on a regular basis. Above all, I want you guys to know this: we love you and we care about you here at Geek Devotions. We genuinely do. And I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what your life has been like. But if we can pray with you, if we can encourage you, please reach out to us. Reach out to us on any of our social media. Just look for Geek Devotions, private message us. We want to encourage you and help you walk through whatever it is you're going through. All that being said, stay devoted, peace and love.